Hi, good evening, everyone. All those of you joining us via Zoom or Facebook, welcome. As we continue to celebrate our 20th anniversary since the establishment of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Market, we are pleased to present to you our second educational webinar where we seek to discuss avenues available to you for you to invest your funds. We thought it very important to bring these to you, as many of you may not know that there is this avenue available to you to make your monies work for you. We also acknowledge that there's a lot of work which needs to be done to educate our populace on investments and financial management. We need these investments to be part of our culture. We need to introduce these financial management techniques to our kids, investment and financial management to our kids from very young. I am of the firm belief that these should be introduced in schools from very early, maybe even made compulsory in our schools, similarly to what obtains with English and maths. Because regardless of the socio-economic background or occupation, money management and investments is a necessity. So we do welcome such opportunities to discuss investment matters with you. And as a matter of fact, I do hope that such webinars and educational sessions will continue beyond this our anniversary celebrations. And I know we, the broker-dealers in the market, we, the brokers in the market, will continue doing so in the foreseeable future. My name is Lawrence Zha, Brokerage Relationship Manager and Registered Principal attached to the brokerage firm Bank of St. Lucia, and I will be your moderator for the evening as we discuss the topic, It's Time to Invest. This evening, we have some very experienced brokers with us who will shed some light on as to how to start your investment journey in the Eastern Caribbean Securities Market. We will firstly hear what is investing, why one should consider investing. We will also hear about the various instruments available to you for investing in this market. And we'll also listen to our third presenter as she tells us the role of the broker in facilitating investing in our presentation tonight. Tonight's discussion will be kept very simple, so even beginners can understand. You may wish to consider it Investing 101. At the end of the presentations, we will have the question and answer segment, so feel free to send in your questions where we can entertain them. But be sure to use the question and answer feature and avoid using the chat, because we may not always see your questions in the chat. So use the feature and we'll sure to answer your questions. Also, we'll also be having a trivia where we'll give the opportunity to 4 of your lucky viewers to win a prize of $250 each. And these, your prize monies will be used to participate and buy securities on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. So do tune into our trivia, and this will be following the presentations as well. So we do welcome you and ensure that you participate in the trivia, as well as sending your questions using the question and answer feature. So without further ado, allow me to present our first presenter for the evening, Ms. Gail Cumberbatch, and she will present on why invest. Gail Cumberbatch is currently the Senior Investment Associate at First Citizens Investment Services in St. Lucia. She is responsible for managing and growing the company's corporate portfolio. This performance-driven professional has over 10 years experience in the local financial sector and is qualified with a BBA in finance and MSc in personal financial planning. In 1 week, she'll be celebrating her first anniversary as being a licensed representative. She's the baby of the group. Gail plans to continue enjoying this experience for many years to come. With a passion for personal finance, Gail continues to work towards improving financial literacy through community-based activities. Ms. Cumberbatch enjoys long hikes, travel, and any place with sun, sand, and water. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you, Lawrence, and good evening, everyone. Let me start by saying how grateful I am to be a part of this initiative. And in this segment, we will start with the why. Why invest? What is investing? Investing is the act of allocating resources usually money, with the expectation of generating income or profit. Some examples of investing: we can purchase equities for dividends and capital gain. We can purchase debt for interest payments. We can go into real estate, buying and selling of property for profit or to generate a rental income, or we can start a business for profits. Tonight, we will focus on the first two examples, particularly those on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. Why should we invest? The easy response would be to make money, right? We earn income generally through employment and business activities, but investments can be used as an additional tool to allow our monies to grow through capital gains and interest income. We should also invest to outpace inflation. Inflation is a general increase in prices, which I know we're all feeling right now, and this can reduce the purchasing power of our monies. Going to the supermarket in 2022 with a $100 bill can definitely give us less goods than it would in 2020. Investments can be used to hedge against inflation. If we look at the example here, if we have an investment of 6% and the inflation rate is 3%, we would have an actual gain of 3%. But if we have our funds in a regular savings account gaining 2% and the inflation rate is 3%, we'll actually be making a loss of 1%. So money can reduce in value with the continued increase in pricing, and investing can be used as a hedge against inflation. Another reason would be to achieve our financial goals, whether it may be to purchase a car, a house, or even save for retirement. We can use investing can assist by increasing our savings income to achieve our specific financial goals. Okay, preparing to invest. Before we invest, we should create an emergency fund. This is 3 to 6 months of our monthly expenses. Basically, if we were to lose our income today, how much money would we need to be okay for the next 3 to 6 months? And this should include debt payments. Okay. The emergency fund protects us against unexpected financial blows, and it prevents the need to premature or sell our investment. These unforeseen events such as job loss, illness, or accidents is usually what gets us to cash in our investments. So this emergency fund would protect us from prematuring our investment. It also allows us to stay on track with our financial plan. Another thing, we should have little to no consumer debt. Consumer debt are these loans that carry high interest rates, such as 10 to 20%, in some cases, even 25%. If we're having these high interest loans while investing, ultimately, this can result in a net loss. As we can see in this example, if we're paying a debt of 15% and we're earning income of 7% from our investment, ultimately, we would have a net loss of 8%. Investing should be part of our holistic financial plan, which may also include retirement planning, tax planning, estate planning, our cash flow, and in some cases, even educational planning, planning to send our kids to school. Our holistic financial plan should also have SMART goals. These are goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. This provides a why for our financial goals. Some considerations we should make when investing is our liquidity needs. How much time do we have to invest? When will we need the invested funds? Basically, what is our time horizon? Would we need the funds in the next 3 to 5 years, in the next 10 years, or in the next 20 to 25 years? This would assist in deciding on which investments we should undertake. Another consideration is our risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is the measure of an investor's ability to comfortably stomach losses or the decline in the value of their investment. On the risk tolerance scale, we have conservative, where the primary goal is to preserve capital, even if it means missing out on potential returns. Then we have moderately conservative, where the primary goal is to preserve capital, but willing to accept a small degree of risk for gains. In the middle, we have moderate, where the primary goal is to reduce risk and enhance return equally. Then we have moderately aggressive, where the primary goal is long-term returns and is willing to accept significant risk. On the other end of the spectrum, we have aggressive, where the primary goal is to maximize return. One may endure extensive volatility and significant losses. We always say with high risk comes high return, but we sometimes forget to add high risk, high return, and high probability of losses. Other factors we should consider in risk tolerance is our time horizon. How much time do we have to invest? A 25-year-old investor would have a higher risk tolerance than a 50-year-old investor for the fact that they have more time to recover any losses that may occur. Okay. Another factor is one's financial situation. If we have to look at the financial situation of maybe Elon Musk and Darren Sammy, Elon Musk would have the capacity to accept more risky investments as opposed to Darren Sammy. And if we have to look at Darren Sammy and myself, then Darren Sammy would definitely have a higher risk tolerance than me. Another factor would be the purpose of the investment. Why are we investing? What are the funds being used for at the end of the investment? Are we investing to save for retirement or just to build wealth? Someone saving for retirement would have a lower risk tolerance than one saving just to build wealth. Some questions that may identify one's risk tolerance as follows. When do you expect to use most of the monies that you are accumulating in your investments? Basically your time horizon, like we mentioned earlier. Due to general market corrections, one of your investments loses 14% of its value. What do you do? Do you take the rest of your investments and run? Do you sit and do nothing? Or do you purchase more of that investment? Another question. You have reached the $10,000 plateau on a TV game show. Now you need to choose between quitting with $100,000 in hand or betting the entire $100,000 on one of the three alternative scenarios. Which one do you choose? A, the $10,000, you take your money and run. B, a 50% chance of winning $50,000. C, a 20% chance of winning $75,000. Or D, a 5% chance of winning $100,000. I would probably choose B or C. I'm kind of in the middle right now. Okay, so let's recap. Investing is the act of allocating resources using usually money with the expectation to generate income or profit. We should invest to build wealth, outpace inflation, and to meet our specific financial goals. Before investing, we should create an emergency fund and have little to no consumer debt. And when investing, we should consider our liquidity needs and risk tolerance. I hand it over to you, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Audience, please remember that if you have any questions for Gail, please free to use the question and answer feature, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Well, we've heard from Gail on why you should invest, and particularly, I mean, there are a number of investment opportunities that may arise. You talk about real estate, etc. But for the purposes of the development of the market, we're speaking about financial securities. So we'll now hear from Laurent Hadley, a little more about the securities available in the Eastern Caribbean Securities Market. Laurent Hadley will present to us his presentation, Understanding Securities. Mr. Hadley is currently the Manager, Treasury and Investments of Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He has been a licensed principal on the ECSE for the last 5 years. He has been affiliated with the market for over 9 years though, having first been licensed as a registered representative. Mr. Hadley has over 8 years experience in merchant banking, investments, and portfolio management, and is also committed, similarly to Gail, is committed to the development of the capital markets in the ECCU. Welcome, Laurent.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and a pleasant evening to all our listeners. It is certainly a pleasure to be a part of such an esteemed panel, and I hope the information that we share here today would go some way to informing the decision-making of existing investors and potential investors of the ECCU and further abroad. My colleague who preceded me gave some insight as to what is required to set the stage, so to speak, for investing. And now my task this evening is to provide some understanding as to some of the products that can be found on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. So if we may take a look at my first slide, I begin with a definition of a financial instrument. And according to the International Accounting Standards, a financial instrument is any contract that gives rise to a financial asset of one entity and a financial liability or equity instrument of another entity. And the first entity we are referring to here is the investor who gets the asset, while the other entity is the issuer of the security who either gets a financial liability or equity. Another definition that could be used, a financial instrument is used by a company or a government as a means of borrowing money and raising new capital. Now, these are the securities that could be found on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. Firstly, there's Equities, which is a security issued by a company to raise capital that represents part ownership in a company. So if a company wants to, let's say, expand their existing operations, or they want to get into a new business, or just for liquidity needs, then they could do so by issuing equities. There is also sovereign debt, which is issued by a country's government to borrow money. So let's say the government has a project it wants to undertake, then they can do so by coming to the market to borrow money by way of sovereign debt. And particularly what this allows is for local and regional investors to invest in the productive sectors of the economy, because in our part of the world, we know governments drive a lot of the development. Also, you could find corporate debt, which is funds raised by companies with a promise to repay. As it relates to equities, there are two main types, common and preferred. But for the sake of this presentation, we will be focusing on common shares because that is the main type that is found on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. And some of the features is that Firstly, it gives an ownership right. So as an equity holder, you would be able to attend the annual general meetings. You will also have a voting right on corporate policies or the selection of directors. Additionally, you're entitled to a dividend which depends on the company's profitability. And this dividend is commensurate with the amount of shares that you have and also the company's dividend policy. Equities can be purchased through an initial public offering, which is the first time when the security comes to market, or they could be purchased on the secondary market. Specific to our platform, the minimum you could invest at any one time is 20 shares. Now, the pros and cons of investing in equity. Firstly, you are entitled to a dividend, as I mentioned previously, which is dependent on the company's profitability and also the amount of shares you have and the company's dividend policy. Additionally, there is potential for growth. So let's say you purchase the shares at one price today, at some point in the future, they could go above that price. And once you sell these shares, you would realize capital gains. Additionally, another benefit is ownership right. And, we as Caribbean people could be a proud people sometimes, proud in a good way. So an investor say in Bank of St. Lucia could say, I am an owner in Bank of St. Lucia, or in St. Vincent, somebody could say, an investor could say, I am an owner in Bank of St. Vincent. So that is another benefit. And also what comes with that, as I also mentioned, is the ability to vote on corporate policy and air your concerns on matters affecting the company. Now, some drawbacks of investing in equities is that this income, the dividend income, could be uncertain because it all depends on the profitability of the company. And if the company is not so profitable, then they would either pay little dividend or no dividend. Additionally, equities are subject to volatility in the market. So if you buy them at one price today, there's a possibility that it could go down depending on if there is any bad news about the company you invested in or just generally poor performance. Another drawback of investing in equities is that they are low on priority for repayment. So shareholders, dividend is paid after interest. Additionally, in the event of a wind-up, shareholders are the last to be repaid. The other security that could be found on the ECSE is sovereign debt. Now, there are three types: Treasury bills, notes and bonds. And these are mainly distinguished on the tenors or the time to maturity. Another feature of sovereign debt is that it has a fixed return. New issues can be purchased through auctions on the RGSM using a competitive process. And most might understand the way how a normal auction works. And you might consider this a reverse auction, as investors compete based on who could offer the government the lowest price. Additionally, you can purchase the sovereign debt on the secondary market. Specific to our platform, the minimum you could invest at any one time is EC 5,000 or US 5,000, and they are sold in denominations of 1,000 thereafter. Another feature is that they are exempt from income tax. Now, these are the distinguishing features of Treasury bills and Treasury notes and bonds. Now, Treasury bills, they have a maturity of less than a year. Additionally, they are issued at a discount. So let's say you want to invest 10,000 and it's discounted at 5%, then you would invest 9,500 upfront. Or what some persons like to say, you get the interest upfront. Another feature of Treasury bills is that their yields are low. They're lower. The yields are lower, so the interest rate or the return that you get on them is generally lower because of the shorter tenor, and they repay the principal at maturity. A feature of Treasury notes and bonds is that they have a maturity of a year or greater, and this could go up to 30 years in some parts of the world, but for most part in our market, they go up to about 10 or 15 years. They're issued at par, so if you invest 10,000 at 5%, 10,000 is what you would pay net of any fees and commissions. And these are generally higher yielding than Treasury bills. And they can either have an amortized repayment structure or a bullet. Amortized being you get equal installments of the principal over the life of the bond, or bullet you get the principal at maturity. Now, some benefits and drawbacks of Treasury bills. Firstly, they are very low risk. So for persons who are risk averse or institutions that are risk averse, then Treasury bills would be better suited for their risk appetite. They pay a fixed rate of return. So if you invest at 5% today, 5% is what you would get when it matures. However, because of their short tenor and their low risk, the returns are also low. And as Gail mentioned previously, risk and return go hand in hand. So the lower the risk, the lower the return. They can also be subject to interest rate volatility. So as interest rates go up, then the value of the Treasury bills could go down. But fortunately, in our part of the world, we are not subject to that level of interest rate volatility. Some benefits and drawbacks of Treasury notes and bonds. They too are low risk when compared to equities. They offer a fixed rate of return. However, their rate of return is higher when compared to Treasury bills. I also have here a drawback as being a fixed rate. And this is a drawback especially in times of rising inflation. So if you invest in a 5-year note, you are locked into that 5% or whatever the rate is for that 5 years. And in times of rising inflation, as we're seeing now, this could erode your returns. And Treasury notes and bonds are also subject to interest rate volatility. The other security that could be found on the ECSE is corporate debt. And there are 3 types: corporate paper, corporate notes and bonds, and they could further be broken out into sectors. So you could have public sector bonds, financial institution bonds. There are also convertible bonds, which could be converted to equity at some point in time. But on our market, there is the loan corporate note issued by the Eastern Caribbean Home Mortgage Bank, which is a 365-day corporate note. The pros and cons of corporate paper are similar to Treasury bills. However, the key distinction is that they have a higher probability of default when compared to Treasury bills, given that Treasury bills have the backing of the government, while corporate paper just has the credibility of the company that issue the corporate paper. And within the context of a country, a government's creditworthiness is the best that you could get within that context. Some pros and cons of corporate notes and bonds. Well, they are generally the same as sovereign notes and bonds. However, a critical distinction is that they have a priority of repayment when compared to equity investors. So because interest is paid before dividends, and additionally, in the event of a wind-up, corporate holders would have priority of repayment before equity holders. Now, when conducting an assessment or an appraisal of an investment, there are several things which we take into consideration. One is the prospectus or offer memorandum, which is a legal disclosure document that provides information about an investment, and that it is required to be filed with the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission. And the prospectus contains information about the company, its management team, recent financial performance, and other related information that investors would like to know. Worthy of consideration also are credit ratings, which is a quantified assessment of the creditworthiness of a borrower in general terms with respect to a financial obligation. And there are several rating agencies. Right here in the Caribbean, we have Equities. Further afield, there is Moody's and Standard & Poor's. We also do fundamental analysis, which is a basic qualitative and quantitative assessment of the information that contributes to the financial or economic well-being of a company. So we might look at things such as the finance statement of financial position, which also known as the balance sheet, or the income statement, or the cash flow, to know what the company's liquidity is like. And I would like to wrap up by saying, in my own experience, some of the apprehension that comes from investing is a lack of understanding, and quite rightly so. If you don't understand something, you shouldn't venture into it. But what I often tell my clients is, while we have one of the most modern trading platforms in our part of the world, our financial products are still relatively simple and fair to understand. And if there is anything you are still unclear about, that you could reach out to one of the licensed representatives in your territory. And I think at this point, I could hand it back over to you, Mr. John.
Thanks, Laurent. Well, we heard some of the securities available to you, available on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange to make your money's work for you. We will now hear from our third presenter for this evening, Ms. Disha Lewis, who will tell you what's the role of the broker-dealer in helping you, in facilitating your request, helping you invest your funds. Ms. Disha Lewis is an expert finance professional with close to 20 years of progressive banking experience and a career which spans customer service, international business, treasury management, and investment banking. Disha worked herself up from entry level in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to one of the most recognizable brokers in the ECCU as part of the Bank of St. Lucia investment banking team. She's a licensed representative and has participated in structuring some of the largest financial transactions for both governments and corporates in the ECCU. Disha is passionate about developing the regional. Disha as well. Disha, it was Gail, Lauren, Disha, all of us are. Disha is passionate about developing the regional securities market and takes joy in advising her clients on investment products and services which would suit their financial goals. In addition to her formal education in banking and finance, Disha has also completed numerous workshops and seminars in anti-money laundering, compliance, investment banking, etc. She is currently pursuing an MBA in finance. Outside of her career, Disha channels a passion through love of sports, particularly cricket, and nature excursions with her family and friends. Welcome, Disha.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. For our final presentation this evening, we'll take a look at the role of the broker-dealer on the ECSE. So who is a broker-dealer? A broker-dealer is a company that carries on the business of dealing in securities or holds itself out as conducting such business as defined in the legislation. And the legislation informs that carry-on business or dealing in securities involves making or offering to make an agreement that affects or causes to effect a securities transaction. So some of the services offered by the broker-dealer according to the legislation includes the buying and selling of securities, and this is where the broker acts as the intermediary between both parties and executes the trade. Investment banking, which involves raising capital and structuring large financial transactions for governments and corporations. They also do underwriting, which involves helping companies issue shares via an initial public offering. The broker-dealer also offers investment advisory services to clients on the buying and selling of securities. For our discussion this evening, we'll focus on the role of the broker-dealer and how we can assist you in buying and selling securities on the ECSE. And there are 6 firms licensed by the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, the ECSRC, to perform the functions of a broker-dealer on the ECSE. And they are the Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines Limited, Bank of St. Lucia, for Citizens Investment Services Limited, the St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank, the Bank of Nevis Limited, and the Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited. It is important to note that no matter where you reside, you can contact any of these available brokers for assistance. So what is the role of the broker-dealer in assisting you in buying and selling securities on the ECSE? Well, the broker focuses on meeting the financial goals of each individual through investing, and that is making your money work for you. And this is a very simple process. When you contact your preferred broker, we will first seek to discuss your objectives, your investment objectives, your goals and cash flow needs. And this is whether your reason for investing is to generate income for long-term growth or short-term trading, or whatever your cash flow needs are in the future. We'll also look at defining your risk appetite. And as mentioned before, your risk appetite is the amount of risk that you are willing to take in pursuit of your objectives, whether it be low, medium, or high. We'll also look at your risk horizon. And you find that individuals in their early investing years are most likely to have a longer investment horizon, whereas seasoned or mature investors are likely to use a shorter horizon because they have less time to realize profits. We'll also discuss your tolerance level and whether you are conservative, a moderate, or an aggressive investor. Based on this discussion, the broker will then offer appropriate recommendations to you. And this can be a security or portfolio that you are comfortable with, one that is diversified, as in not putting all of your eggs in one basket, and one that maximizes your potential return while keeping your risk at a minimum. Your broker will also open a brokerage account for you, and the broker will provide you with the account forms and the KYC requirements, which is usually 2 forms of valid government issued ID and proof of address. They'll also create a registry account at the Eastern Caribbean Securities Depository in your name, and this is where your securities will be held in an electronic form. The broker will collect the applications and the funds for the cost of the transaction, And this will depend on the security that you're purchasing, the quantity, the price, and the applicable brokerage fee. Once your trade has been executed, the broker will also provide you with a confirmation statement with the details of your trade. So now that you have decided to invest, what are the options available on the ECSE? If you're looking to buy equities, there are 13 companies currently listed on the ECSE. And the table shows the country, the company name, the trading symbol, the last closing price, and the last dividend. And dividend is paid based on the number of shares that you own at record date, which is the date that you must be on the company's book as a shareholder to receive the dividend. Typically, companies pay dividend twice a year, although some firms pay dividends on a quarterly basis. The details are usually announced alongside half and full year results. If we look at St. Lucia Electricity Services, for example, we see that in December 2021, the company paid 45 cents per share. So if a shareholder owned 100 shares in that company, they would have received dividend of $45. And the company also paid a dividend in July of 2021. There are also companies such as First National Bank St. Lucia Limited and the West Indies Oil Company in Antigua, who would have issued shares via an IPO, but the shares are not available for trading on the ECSE or listed on the ECSE. These shares can be traded over the counter using the ECCSD private transfer form, and your broker can assist you in executing this transaction. If you're looking to purchase an equity, the minimum quantity is 20 shares. The broker commission usually is 3% or a minimum of $30. The ECSE fees is 0.30% or a minimum of EC12. So in our example below, if an investor purchases 100 BUSBG shares at $9 per share, inclusive of the broker's commission and fees, they'll pay a total of $942. And this slide shows the latest trade activity for equities on the ECSE. And we see that quite a few of the securities were traded recently. So there is an active ECSE secondary market for the buying and selling of securities. If you decide to purchase a treasury bill or a bond, the table below shows the upcoming auctions on the ECSE. And this is exactly how the calendar appears on the ECSE's website. The auctions run from 9 to 12 noon. If you look at the 14th of April, we see that the government of St. Lucia will be auctioning a 180-day EC20 mil treasury bill at a maximum rate of 4%. This 4% is the highest rate that the government will pay for the treasury bill, whereas each investor gives their minimum acceptable rate to their broker. If your minimum rate is 3.5%, you're basically telling your broker that I'm willing to accept no lower than 3.5% for this treasury bill. The broker will then bid for you on auction day based on these two rates. And we'll see how it works in the next slide. The link on the website also takes you to the prospectus for the issuer, which gives information to the public on the investment offering. So let's say you decide to purchase a treasury bill. The minimum amount is EC 5,000 multiples of 1,000. They're usually issued at a discount, as Lauren mentioned, which means the interest is basically paid upfront, and it is done via competitive uniform price auction. Now, in a competitive uniform price auction, at the close of the auction, the bids are accepted in ascending order. That's the lowest to highest of their rate until the quantity of awarded bids reach the issue amount, say EC20 mil in the case of the upcoming USL auction. Uniform price means that all successful investors will receive the same rate. So, If the auction closes at 3.75%, but your minimum was 3.5% and you were successful, you will receive 3.75%. And in our example below, the investor purchased 50,000 in the government of St. Lucia 180-day Treasury bill, closing at 3.75%. So the discount was 0.981843. So the investor paid 49,092.15, and inclusive of fees, they paid 49,157.15. So the difference between the 50,000 and the total amount paid for the Treasury bill is the interest. And the principal of 50,000 will be repaid at maturity. Okay. If you purchase a bond, the minimum is the same, EC 5,000, multiples of 1,000 thereafter. And they're issued at par, which Lawrence also mentioned earlier, via a competitive uniform price auction. And par value refers to how much a bond will be worth on its maturity date. In our example below, the investor was successful in the government of St. Lucia 10-year 6.99% bond, and this auction actually took place on March 22nd. The investor invested 50,000, so they paid 50,000, and inclusive of the fees, they paid $50,200. The interest based on the amount of 50,000 and at a rate of 6.99% will be $3,495 per year. However, the bond pays interest semi-annually, so the investor will receive EC $1,747.50 every 6 months for 10 years until the bond matures. So this slide shows the latest or some of the latest trading activity for Treasury bills and bonds. And we see that the tenors range from 91 days up to 10 years. And the higher the rate, you'll notice, or the longer the term, the higher the rate. And this is because you're compensated for investing in a longer term security. So now that you're a security holder, what happens next? If you purchase equities, you receive dividends on shares once declared by the company. And this will be paid in accordance to the banking details that you provided to the broker. If you purchase a bond, you receive interest on the bond until maturity, and the principal, also in the case of a Treasury bill, will be paid at maturity. You can also sell the security on the secondary market, and this will allow you to achieve capital gains if you purchase equity. That is, you purchase a share at one price and the price of the shares goes up over time. You can sell the shares and get a profit from the sale of your investment. This also provides liquidity. You can also use your security as collateral to a lending institution. Yes, the interest rate offered on a bond, for example, is higher than the rate on a cash deposit. As such, the interest earned on the bond can offset the interest paid on the loan. You can also process changes to your registry account, such as the addition or removal of names, name change in the case of a marriage, update your payment details, donation transfers, where you can donate all or part of your holdings to a family member or a registered charity. And your broker-dealer will assist you in processing these changes to your account by completing the required ECCSD form and certifying the supporting documents. So in closing, it is important, and I'm stressing, it is important to seek guidance from a trained, licensed individual before purchasing a financial asset. And the licensed broker-dealers on the ECSE are here to assist you. This ends our presentation on the role of the broker-dealer on the ECSE. Thank you.
Thank you, Disha. Well, actually, thank you to all our presenters for the night. We've come to the end of the presentations. And now it's the question and answer segment. I invite everyone to please fill in your questions and make use of the question and answer feature. And we will be addressing these questions until the end of tonight's proceedings. At this point, we will be sharing the link for our trivia. And as indicated earlier, you have the opportunity to, 4 of you have the opportunity to win $250, which will go towards purchase of securities on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. So the link will be provided shortly, and you will have about 10 minutes to complete this trivia and send in your responses. The 4 persons with the most correct answers in the trivia will be put in a draw, which we will do right there on the screen, where we will choose the 4 winners for the night. But in the meantime, we welcome you to submit your questions to our brokers, and we'll be addressing them till the end of the session tonight. Let's start with a question. Which investment allows me a tax rebate? Lauren, do you want to take in that question?
Sure. Well, not so much a tax rebate, but all the investments on the ECSE are exempt from income tax in the respective territories. So that is my answer to that question.
And in addition to what Lauren indicated, you can get tax deductibility on some securities. For example, if an entity is in a primary issue, that means if the entity is issuing the securities to the public, so you're buying the shares directly from an entity, say ECFH, Bank of St. Vincent, wants to raise capital and are issuing shares. Well, in St. Lucia, once you purchase these shares directly from the company in an initial public offering or additional public offering, you can claim from your taxes up to $5,000. Similarly to what obtains with investing in shares in a credit union. If you invest in shares in a public company, which is coming out to market, you can get your tax deductibility. Other than that, shares which change hands on the secondary market will not be used to claim from your income taxes. I have another question. I am a teacher. Unfortunately, I am not entitled to a gratuity. I therefore need to prepare for retirement. Which of the investment options is best? Justify the selection, please. Thanks. Person is a teacher and doesn't have a is not entitled to gratuity and wants to know which security would best suit them. Gail, you wish to handle this question?
Yeah, Lawrence, I think we need a little more information to make such recommendations. Because yes, you're a teacher, but then how much time do you have till retirement? What is your savings like? What is your risk tolerance? So a lot of the things we mentioned in the presentation are things that would consider. So that's when you would probably need to come to one of us, and we could probably divulge some more information and we can advise accordingly.
Yeah, and just to add to what Gail said, I don't know if she mentioned it. It all depends on what stage of their teaching career they're at. Is this a young teacher or a teacher close to retirement? You know, a younger teacher would be able to take some more risk, while an older teacher would have to be more conservative. So, as Gail said, there are other things that would need to be taken into consideration in giving such advice.
And if I may add as well, it also depends on the goals of the teacher. What are your goals? What are your financial obligations? How are you budgeting? What will be your cash flow needs in the future? So like Gail mentioned, there are a lot of things that we'll need to consider, and so that we can give an answer that will be specific to your situation.
Okay, thank you. Hope this answers this question. What advice would you give for someone investing now as risk is high and returns are low? What advice would you give to someone investing now as risk is high and returns are low?
I think that would be a similar answer to the previous question, because that's general. Risk is high, returns are low. But what are you investing in? Are you willing to take the higher risk for higher returns in some of the other investments that are available right now? So I think the answer would be similar to our previous answer.
Yes, I'm thinking that if the risk is high, to entice you to assume that risk, the returns would have to be high. Anybody issuing securities, high-risk securities, will not issue at a low rate, because what's attractive about that investment prospect? Because I could safely put my monies in some lower risk instrument, not having to worry about me losing my monies, and still get the same returns that you'll be offering. So to entice me to invest to assume that risk, you'd have to compensate me by giving me a high returns. Another question: the brokers request several documents that would need to be notarized. If you're out of state. I understand the purpose of notarized documents, but it is costly to notarize over 4 documents. Whereas brokers trading platforms outside the Caribbean don't require notarized documents, will there be any changes to requesting the documents being notarized?
So the question is if there will be any changes to the request for notarized documents. I would say no, because the broker-dealers, they will have their AML policies and procedures that they will need to follow. And the reason for notarized documents, you also have to remember that you're not signing in the presence of the broker-dealer. So we have to be able to, our team will need to be able to vet this client and to ensure that the client who is actually submitting the application forms is the person who they say they are. So the documents would need to be notarized so we can validate the customer that we're onboarding into our system.
Okay, thank you, Disha. Are there any mutual funds available to the smaller investors? Disha, while you're on the floor, do you want to take this one?
In our region, no. And I am not at the liberty to speak right now, but I am aware that there may be some innovation happening in that space right now. However, at the appropriate time, the information will be shared with the public.
Thank you. When I purchase my securities, must I hold it? And I imagine the person is speaking, yes. Must I hold it until it matures? I would imagine the person is speaking about bonds.
Not necessarily, and that is the thing too, that is the culture we're trying to move away, the buy and hold culture, which is sort of inhibiting the activity on the market. So you don't necessarily have to hold. I mean, once you buy a bond, you could try to sell it before the maturity to see if you could make some gains on it. Additionally, in my presentation, I mentioned that bonds could be subject to interest rate volatility. As the rates go up, the value go down. But the good thing about bonds, if you hold them to maturity, they return their par value. So that could be a reason for holding them to maturity. So it could go either way. The recommendation could go either way.
Okay, viewers, remember that there's a trivia. The trivia will be closed shortly. So please, if you wish to win the $250, please enter the trivia, the competition, which will be closing very shortly. Are there any interest-bearing securities available in the region to facilitate young persons who want to start building their savings towards an initial $5,000?
I think the person is asking is there anything below the minimum of $5,000? So that to help them save?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, I would just recommend that that's where money management comes in and goals come in, especially your specific goal. So you have your time and your plan to save up that $5,000 for your first investment. So you may want to you can use a regular savings account that you have less access to. You can try the set it and forget it method for like a standing order or a salary deduction. You set your monthly contributions to that savings to an account and you forget about it for the time until you reach that $5,000 to make your first investment. You can also look for other financial instruments like maybe fixed income paper, etc., which may have a minimum less than $5,000.
And Gil, if I may add, the key here as well is to be disciplined. When you set aside that money, let's say in a super saver account, because banks offer these accounts, or fixed deposit accounts, so it allows you to be disciplined. And you can also look at separating this account from your debit card, because you know once you have a debit card and there are funds on that account, you're always tempted when you see something. I mean, Amazon is right there. So I would also recommend, while you're putting aside this money to build for investing, to ensure that you have as little access to that money as possible.
Okay. How easy is it to sell equities I hold on the ECSE?
The process of selling is not quite difficult. You open you have a brokerage account, you go to your broker and you indicate that you would like to sell your equities, and the broker will start the process of listing it on the exchange or seeking a buyer. Now, what may delay would be the demand for that equity. We have, like Disha mentioned, there's a number of equities on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange, and they each have their own demand level. Like persons would like to purchase, just like any other commodity. Some things sell quicker than others, you know. There's some things on there that would sell like hot bread, and others may take a little longer to sell. So it would all depend on the security itself and the price you're willing to accept for that security.
Okay. A follow-up question: how long does it actually take for the shares to be sold?
It goes back to Gail's answer. It depends as well, of course, on the demand for the security. And that will determine how quickly the security can be sold on the market. So there's not a specific time, but your broker, of course, they have a wide base of clients who they can contact, or who they know might be interested in purchasing the security that you are looking to sell, and they can therefore arrange that trade for you. You can also do a cross trade. If you have someone, a family member, a friend who wants to purchase the shares directly from you, you can also do a cross trade, as in the trade is not executed on the market, but it just changes ownership between the two parties.
Okay. Theoretically, it is said that bonds carry the lower risk. And I guess Mr. Hadley did indicate bonds being less risky than equity. What risk are we talking about when you speak about risk with regards to bonds, and whose risk are we assuming?
Well, like I mentioned in the presentation, bondholders have a priority of repayment before equity holders, because as it relates to interest payments on bonds, that is paid before dividends. Additionally, in the event of a wind-up, bondholders have a priority of repayment before shareholders. So that is the key the key drawback with respect to bonds versus equity?
Yes, but yes, I think purchasing bonds, the risk is not with the broker. So the risk is with the issuer of these bonds, which will be most times sovereign, which is whether it be government of St. Lucia, government of Commonwealth of Dominica, government of St. Vincent. So the risk is that these governments will not be able to meet their obligations to you as they come due. And the risk is not to the broker firm which facilitated your order, but rather the issuer. So once you're making that decision, that's what you need to take into consideration. Will that government be able to pay you? If it's a 5-year bond, will they be able to pay you your semi-annual interest over the period of 5 years? And will you be able to get your principal payment at the end of the 5 years? Another question, what assurance does the average investor have that the information provided by the entities issuing the instruments is reliable? So I'd imagine what the customer is asking about, in other words, how the customer assures that the information has been received through the prospectus is reliable.
Well, the reliability of the prospectus comes by virtue of it having to be filed with the commission. But as an investor, you shouldn't really rely on the prospectus alone. You need to do your own research and get more information before you make a decision.
Another question, can I put beneficiaries to my shares? Disha, you care to answer?
You cannot put a beneficiary to your shares, but you can add a joint holder or as many joint holders as you would like. But you just have to know that once you add a joint holder, if you need to add another holder or remove that same joint holder, all account holders must sign in order for that to happen.
And just to add to what Disha said, in St. Vincent, the beneficial holder relationship doesn't really hold up in court. So even if you have a beneficial holder, if there is need for administration, then it would still have to go to the court. But as she said, a joint holder would have more power in that regard.
Just to follow up, I think at the end of the day, just like all of our assets, the ideal thing to do would include it in your last will and testament. So in your last will of testament, you would include who you would like your shares to go to. So I think that's the best way to control who your shares go to at the end of the day, because it is considered an asset.
Can I add a minor to my securities?
You can add a minor to your securities, but you will have to be mindful that you will not be able to transfer or sell the shares until the minor turns 18. So yes, but there will be restrictions.
Okay, and just to add to what Disha said, if you want to sell before the minor turns 18, then it has to go to the court, and we all know how the court process is. It could be a lengthy process, and I've seen persons get frustrated with it. So it's something to be mindful of, that there's a law restricting the transfer of assets that are jointly held with minors.
All right. Why is the number of corporate notes, bonds listed on the ECSE so low? How do investors diversify their portfolios when the majority of issuers are governments?
And this, I think, is one of the goals right now by providing education to our community here in the Eastern Caribbean. We're trying to build the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange and encourage more of our corporations in here to consider listing and selling shares publicly. So it's part of the growth process, and I'm sure with additional education and development, we should see an increase in corporate participation on the exchange.
Okay, thank you, Gail. So at this point, we will go to our draw, where we will draw 4 lucky winners for the night. As indicated, the prize is $250, which will go towards the purchasing of securities on the ECSE. So as you see, we have a number of persons on our wheel who successfully answered many of the questions. Okay, so can we start the draw, please? Congratulations to Tia Henry. Tia Henry, congratulations to you. You've just won $250 that you could use towards purchasing of securities on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. Time for our second winner. Okay, our second winner is Donald Walker King. Congratulations to you, Donald. Crispin Andrews Sr., you're our third winner for this evening. Congratulations to you. Crispin Andrews Sr. And for our final winner for the night, Keisha Sutherland Constant. Keisha Sutherland Constance, congratulations to you. So we urge all you winners tonight, the 4 winners, to please contact your preferred broker-dealer. If you don't have one, you could visit the ECSE website on ECSEonline.com and make contact with one of the broker-dealers. Would be happy to assist you in facilitating the purchase of your securities. Once again, the winners for the night: Tia Henry, Donald Walker King, Crispin Andrews Sr., Keisha Sutherland Constance. So congratulations to all our winners. And it was quite balanced. I'm seeing 2 males and 2 females. Very well done. So we're heading towards the end of our program, but we have enough time to field some more questions, which we'll do. How does one go about increasing the treasury bills? For instance, if you started with 5,000 and the next opening, you would like to increase your amount to 7,000. Is that possible?
Yes, you can. The minimum is 5,000, but there's also not a minimum. So you can invest as much as you wish. Just be mindful, of course, that they are in multiples of 1,000.
Okay. Are there any instruments available for individuals who want to make a fixed monthly contribution towards retirement? I am 34 years old, currently have no pension or supplementary retirement plan. I am a moderately conservative investor who wants to retire in 20 years.
Okay, an investment that would make monthly contributions, currently no, but like we mentioned earlier, you can have your monthly contribution go towards your investment savings, right? So you have money set aside for investments, and once you get to your $5,000, you can start, and you can continue, and every year probably transfer that money to your savings from your savings to your investments. So you can always increase your investments throughout your 20-25 year span of from now to retirement. So you can continue saving and in increments, increase your investment, increase your portfolio, reinvest the interest or your capital gains, diversify, and basically start from now, build your portfolio with a specific goal at retirement.
In addition, I know there are many entities in the ECCU who offer retirement accounts where you accept your monthly payments and you save towards your retirement via that facility. It's also tax deductible in the various jurisdictions. So you feel free to contact your financial institution, for more information on these retirement products. The second panelist would have mentioned that the rate of a bond is subject to interest rate volatility. Can someone expand on that point, Laurent?
Yes, so what it is, the value of bonds and the interest rates share an inverse relationship. And I don't know if persons were paying attention to what was happening in the US market when the Fed increased the rate by 25 basis points, and this created some volatility in the market. So that is what I mean when there's an inverse relationship between the value of bonds and the interest rate. But as I mentioned, even though there is this volatility, once you hold your bond to maturity, then it would mature at par. So it eliminates any losses you would have incurred. And I also mentioned that in our part of the world, we are not subject to that level of interest rate volatility because we have a minimum savings rate, which is fixed, and our authority doesn't practice that level of open market operation. So we don't have that level of volatility.
Okay, another question. How do I invest if there is no broker-dealer in my country?
You can invest if there's no broker-dealer in your country. As we mentioned, the licensed broker-dealers are available to everyone. So you contact your broker-dealer, we can have the conversation on the phone, we will email you the forms, you'll have your documents notarized and sent back to us. So not because there's not a broker located in your country does not mean that you cannot invest on the ECSE. And the ECSE operates on a fully electronic platform. So anybody can invest. You just need to contact your broker-dealer and they'll arrange for you to open the brokerage account and begin purchasing securities on the ECSE.
Okay. Another question, is ECHMB instruments available to the general public or only to financial institutions?
No, it is not. It's available to institutions and individuals. And as a matter of fact, they even offer a better rate for individuals. So that is something worthwhile to consider.
Okay, another question. Is there a list of public companies available to the public?
Yes, all that information can be found on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange website. That's ECSEonline.com. I say it again, ECSEonline.com. You could get a listing of all the publicly traded companies on there.
Okay, well, I'll just read it, but it has been answered. I have long noticed that Montserrat, for example, is part of the OECS and the ECCU, but have not found any brokers on the island. Not even Bank of Montserrat seem to be facilitating residents to save and to invest within the regional exchange. Well, Disha has answered that to contact a broker, visit the ECSE online, and any of our brokers will be more than happy to facilitate your investment needs. Can you please give examples of firms in the ECCU that offers retirement accounts?
Well, if I can speak to St. Lucia and Bank of St. Lucia, we do have a retirement plan. So feel free to contact us. We'll let you know what the requirements are, and so that we can set up that retirement fund for you.
Okay. Another question, how soon should someone start considering investing?
That's an easy one. Now. Now. Why wait till now?
Providing they have the capacity.
Providing that they have the capacity. I mean, we've just provided a wealth of knowledge to start investing 101, like you mentioned at the beginning. And we have an avenue with all of our broker dealers and advisors on there to assist in investing. So you can start now.
So viewers, we have 2 minutes left. So feel free to set in. We have time for about just 2 more questions. I sold my shares in January 2022, but has not actually been paid. Can I reverse the sale? Someone indicated that they probably came in to sell shares, but have not gotten their monies yet. What I would assume is that the shares have not been sold. That's what I would assume. And if the shares have not been sold, then you can come in to cancel your order.
Yeah, and the settlement, sorry, Lawrence.
Go ahead, Disha.
And the settlement for shares, well, any trade on the ECSE takes place on T+1. So the broker would have notified you at least, well, in the afternoon, and by the following day, the funds would have been credited to your account. As Lawrence mentioned, it probably is a case that the shares have not been sold and they are still on the market. So I'd advise you to contact your broker dealer. You have the option of modifying your order. If the price of the shares has since fallen and you would now like to put the shares up at a lower price, you have that option as well. And as Lawrence said, if you want to cancel the order, you can do that as well. So like I said, I would advise you to contact your broker to know what your options are.
All right, thanks, Disha. As anything else, all good things come to an end, and we arrived at the end of our presentation for the night. I hope this evening's discussion has been an enlightening one for you. You've heard from our presenters as to why you should invest, the different securities available to you on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Market, and also how you could go about purchasing and selling these securities. Many of you viewers may already been investing in real estate or different business ventures, etc. What we endeavor to do tonight is to show you another avenue available to you, investing in financial securities. All of you would have heard about more established markets such as the NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, London Securities Exchange, etc. However, we also have our very own market, which offers you some of these securities as well. And we need you to participate in this market to help develop it, to help make it more liquid. So viewers, now the ball is in your court. Now the decision is yours. to begin making your monies work for you. I trust that you will consider making use of the financial securities that you've heard about tonight, available on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. I would again like to congratulate Tia Henry, Donald Walker King, Crispin Andrew Sr., Keisha Sutherland Constance. Please remember to contact your broker dealer, or if you don't already have one, you can visit the website ECSEonline.com, and you'll see a list of the 6 broker dealer firms. And we will be more than happy to assist you in making use of that prize money. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and we look forward to having more of these educational programs. So stay tuned for our next webinar, which will be coming very soon. As indicated earlier, we the brokers do commit to holding more of these webinars, so keep your eyes peeled. Thank you, good night, and stay safe everyone. Bye.